A family stood up on Christmas Day.
That was a huge red flag that something was up.
Had he left on his own?
The small town life was a challenge for him.
Or was he involved in something much more sinister?
He had texted and basically said, "This is going to be a fun night."
The hunt for a mystery man.
They immediately recognized this guy and said, "That's our guy."
And a conclusion that no one saw coming. Why was this a case that everybody was talking about?
I think it was sort of titillating. It had murder, sex, kink, all those components to it.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to Swartz Creek, Michigan, a small city right outside of Flint. The rural community made headlines when one of its residents vanished on Christmas Eve. The search to find him led to one of the most bizarre and twisted investigations that anyone has ever seen. It was a beautiful Christmas day in Michigan, but instead of a joyful celebration, the family of 25-year-old Kevin Bacon was worried sick. Kevin was supposed to be at his parents' home at 9 a.m. for Christmas breakfast, but he never arrived.
When he didn't show up for that was a huge red flag that something was up.
His parents tried calling and texting, but got no response. They then reached out to Kevin's friends, who also tried getting in touch with him, but no one was able to reach him.
It was completely out of character for Kevin not to answer calls or texts. You would think he would have responded to someone, and when he didn't, it set off alarm bells pretty quickly.
Kevin's family didn't understand why he was suddenly MIA. He had been looking forward to the holidays.
He loved his family. He loved Christmas. He had just seen his mother and sister the night before, and he, by all accounts, was ready to celebrate Christmas.
His parents tried not to think the worst, but they also had to consider the fact that Kevin had a past history of mental illness.
He was somebody who struggled. He had weight issues. He had some depression. He was a cutter in the past.
He had also been institutionalized a couple times for depression.
Growing up in a rural town with only 5,000 residents, Kevin had always felt like an outsider.
The small town life was a challenge for him, and he was known to be somewhat flamboyant. He would often dye his hair pink or purple or, strange colors, and he sometimes carried a purse, and all of that sort of garnered him the reputation as being strange or an oddball in Little Swartz Creek.
So this is mid-Michigan, this is farm country. I would imagine there's judgment, very conservative kind of area where not a lot of people look like Kevin Bacon in mid-Michigan.
But despite his past struggles, it seemed as if he were starting to embrace what made him different with the support of his family.
His grandmother is Grace Bacon. She's a well-known and highly revered transgender activist here in Michigan.
Kevin had shared with her his dreams for the future.
And he went to the U of M Flint for a degree in psychology. He wanted to be a counselor in the LGBT community because that's where his heart was.
Kevin seemed excited for the first time ever about where his life was headed. That's why his disappearance just didn't make sense. By mid-afternoon, his family decided to go looking for him around town.
Pretty quickly, they found his car.
The car was parked in front of a local store, which was closed for the holidays. When they looked inside, what did they discover?
Inside his car were his wallet, his cell phone, and a bag of clothes.
Fear turned into sheer panic at that point, and Kevin's family knew they needed help.
His father, Carl Bacon, reported him missing and got the police involved. He felt for sure something was wrong.
They immediately recognized this guy and said, "That's our guy."
Police investigating the disappearance of Kevin Bacon tried to retrace his last steps. They learned from his roommate Michelle that Kevin had plans to go out on Christmas Eve.
He had a date with somebody that he met on Grindr.
Grindr, Tinder, these are all apps for gay men who are trying to hook up, sometimes just to meet, sometimes for sexual reasons with other gay men.
Michelle said that Kevin had been excited to meet his date and had even checked in with her after he was with him.
He had texted and basically said, "This is going to be a fun night. If mom asks, I'm sleeping." And that was the last text message conversation that he had.
So when you heard that Kevin had met somebody online and was now missing, what were you thinking?
My suspicions went automatically to something happened.
Investigators focused in on trying to find out who Kevin had been meeting the night he vanished. His roommate Michelle knew his Grindr password, and police read through his messages.
They were able to go back and look at his conversation starting on December 23rd, and one of those conversations was with a man who was 50 years old, and Kevin apparently shared with him that he was interested in a little bondage, a little BDSM.
So they kind of went back and forth and agreed on the scenario in which Kevin would be blindfolded, he would be bound, he would be naked.
It was a fantasy that Kevin had never experienced with a stranger before, and he asked for reassurance from his potential date. The man replied that he would keep him safe and prove that he was trustworthy. Kevin then agreed to meet him on Christmas Eve around 5:30 p.m. in the parking lot where his car was found. Investigators knew they needed to find out who this man was, but there was one big issue.
He had a screen name, which I cannot pronounce, but it means wolf in Greek.
Detectives released a missing persons poster, along with the detail that Kevin had been chatting with a user on Grindr named Olikos. The next day, someone came forward and said they recognized the name and led police to a Facebook page for Lukas Olikos Latunsky.
They immediately recognized this guy and said, "That's our guy."
The man's real name was Mark Latunsky, and he didn't live far from Kevin Bacon.
It's about a 20-25 minute drive from Schwartz Creek to Mark Latunsky's house in Bennington Township.
As investigators began looking into Latunsky, no one could prepare them for what they were about to discover.
You can imagine what those officers, what they were thinking at that time when they walked down and saw this.
Police had their sights set on Mark Latunsky, the man Kevin Bacon met online and had a date with the night he disappeared. So what did investigators learn about Mark Latunsky?
Mark Latunsky, sort of starting back, he was married. He was described as a family man. He had 4 kids. He was a very successful chemist. He worked in a lab.
But detectives learned he had a dark side. After getting a divorce, he began an alternate lifestyle and was no stranger to the police. On October the 10th, just 2 months before Kevin's disappearance, a man called 911 after running out of Latunsky's home.
I'm here in Detroit. I'm from New York. And I met this guy at the bus station who offered me a ride. And I'm not even sure who I am. I broke out of this bullshit, and I need a ride. I'm in trouble.
The caller said he didn't know where he was or what had happened to him.
I met this guy. I'm by. He was cute. He hit on me. I know. We went out to the car. We talked. We went to the store. Had a soda.
He told the operator he didn't remember anything after that and believed he may have been drugged. He said when he opened his eyes, he was in a basement and his ankles were bound by leather straps that had chains attached to them. He was alone and his instinct told him to escape.
He was able to reach a butcher knife, and he was able to cut the leather straps that were constraining him, and actually went running into the night, still holding the butcher knife.
So when I see a police officer, I will throw it. Until then, I don't trust that he's not walking up because I got lost, and I don't even know if I'm headed towards his house or not.
Police located the terrified man minutes later and brought him to safety. He told them that the guy he had met that night was Mark Latunsky. He said he didn't want an investigation and just wanted to go back to New York. Without his cooperation, there was nothing more police could do. Then a month later, on November the 25th, another 911 call came in about Mark Latunsky. This time, the frightened man ran out of Latunsky's home and straight to one of Latunsky's neighbors.
A guy showed up on his porch. He was wearing a leather skirt, belts across his chest, had purple hair, and was covered in blood. Comes to a neighbor's house of Mark Latunsky's, screaming, clutching this guy's arm, begging to keep him safe.
I want to get away from some creepy guy. He had me tied up in his basement.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm trying to escape from some guy who had me chained up in his basement.
Police took a report, but Latunsky was never arrested because police say the man didn't want to cooperate in an investigation.
Neither man, perhaps shameful about the experience or how the meeting came down, neither man wanted to press charges. So police were really left with nothing to do.
After hearing about the other two incidents, investigators were convinced Kevin was probably still at Mark Latunsky's home and got a search warrant for the property. Latunsky was put in the back of a police car while officers went inside. When they got to the basement, they came across a shocking sight.
Some of my sources had described it as a sex dungeon or a medieval torture chamber. There's a sort of a trap door to hide this room in which there's this very intricate medieval pulley system and other kinds of paraphernalia for either torture or sexual gratification.
And in the middle of it all was the lifeless body of Kevin Bacon.
It was a scene that police officers said they had never seen before and would certainly never forget. Kevin had been stabbed in the back, and he'd had his throat slit, he had his body mutilated.
He was hanging from his ankles, bound by rope to this intricate pulley system. It was over some kind of container in which he was essentially bled out like an animal. You can imagine what those officers, what they were thinking at that time when they walked down and saw this.
Stunned officers came upstairs to report what they had discovered.
Can we get some sort of update for EMS?
Central, this is most likely a K. We're going to treat this as homicide.
As officers waited for homicide detectives to arrive, one of them spoke with Latunsky, who seemed completely unfazed by everything.
Do you know what's going on? Do you know why you're in the back of this car?
Yes, I know why I'm back in the back of this car.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know, I got my detective en route. My detective's probably going to want to talk to you, okay? So
That's fine.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to let you know.
And then once I talk to him, how am I going to get back home?
Well, let's get stage one first, okay? Let's get the detective out here.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
then I can explain to him all the things that you guys don't know.
Okay.
And then I can come back home.
After detectives arrived, Latunsky was taken to police headquarters for questioning.
He admits to killing Kevin. He makes no qualms about it. He did kill Kevin. What he said was that Kevin was suicidal, and he claimed that Kevin wanted to end his life, and that he told him he could help him do that. It was sort of an assisted suicide type of incident, was what Mark claimed.
After we sat and made an agreement about what was going to happen, we made the agreement, and he was supposed to disappear, be gone.
During the 3-hour interview, Latunsky called Kevin his hero and described how he planned to use Kevin's body to regenerate life in his garden.
There's a pile of mulch out back. I was just gonna cover it with mulch.
You're going to cover his bones with mulch?
No, not the bones. I was just gonna take the internal gut portions and get rid of it, so that they were each growing things.
He seemed proud of what he had done and was surprised when detectives told him he was under arrest.
Well, at this point, we are going to put you back in that cell there. And under the circumstances, you're going to be going to jail tonight so we can figure out exactly what the prosecutor wants to do.
The next morning, Mark Latunsky was charged with first-degree murder. The story made headlines all over the country.
Well, I think it was sort of titillating. It had murder, sex, kink, all those sort of components to it.
The news even reached celebrities. Actor Kevin Bacon tweeted his condolences, and makeup artist Jeffree Star helped pay for Kevin's funeral. Meanwhile, Mark Latunsky claimed he was not guilty by reason of insanity, but a judge found him competent to stand trial. As that date finally approached, Latunsky would once again shock everyone with a big announcement. Almost 3 years after Kevin Bacon was murdered, his killer, Mark Latunsky, surprised even his own attorney when he decided to take a plea deal. When you heard that he was going to plead guilty to avoid trial, were you pleased?
Yes, very relieved. That allowed Carl to not go through all the things you would hear at the trial. And I think it was much better for him that way. And I was relieved for him and myself because we didn't have to go through that.
Kevin's family read victim impact statements during Latunsky's sentencing hearing.
There were letters read by the family, and they were very candid in that their lives had basically been ruined, that they would never be able to celebrate Christmas again. As Carl Bacon, Kevin's father, said, evil does exist, and it touched their family that night.
Latunsky was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As part of the plea deal, he will get mandatory counseling with a psychiatrist. And although they were happy with the sentence, Kevin's family knew that nothing would ever bring him back.
We are a very small family, and there's a big chunk of it missing now. His grandmother is gone. His parents split up. The only people that are left in the family are my son Carl, my granddaughter, and myself. So there's a big chunk of it missing, and it'll always be missing now.
Kevin's family has made it a personal mission to warn people about predators online and the dangers of using a dating app. They don't want any other family to ever have to go through what they did. And now, it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. While there are always risks with online dating, here are a few tips you can use to help maximize your safety. For initial meetings, avoid going to a person's residence or secluded location. Consider telling a trusted friend or family member where you will be or electronically share your location with them. And nowadays, apps like Life 360 allow you to see loved ones' locations, receive notifications when they arrive or leave destinations, and get alerts if they need help. And finally, block and report any suspicious individuals you interact with online. You never know when raising a red flag might help prevent yourself or someone else from being victimized. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe. A single mother gunned down in cold blood.
This particular murder was extremely violent.
She was shot 11 times in total. The majority of those struck her head. It essentially ripped apart her brain and severed her spinal cord.
While the initial scene looked like an attempted carjacking,
it was a crime that just didn't make any sense. Law enforcement was pretty stumped at why such a brutal crime would have occurred in this manner.
detectives wondered if it had been a hired hit.
We learned that he had been followed, individuals had tracked her movements.
And when the pieces of the puzzle finally came together, it would reveal the shocking truth.
It's heartbreaking. As the investigation progresses and you learn about Miss Young and really the motive for this murder.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to St. Louis, Missouri. This buzzing metropolis along the Mississippi River was the setting for a perplexing and disturbing mystery. It would take law enforcement down a dark and very twisted path to bring justice to a brave young woman. It was just before midnight on a hot summer night when a call came into the police department.
There had been a shooting on the parking lot of a White Castle.
First responders raced to the scene and found the victim slumped over the wheel of her car.
So on scene, investigators arrived to find Miss Young, who was seated in the driver's seat of her car. It was immediately apparent that Miss Young had been the victim of the shooting. There was ballistic damage through the driver's side window of her car. She had been shot multiple times.
As the victim was rushed to the hospital, her purse and wallet were located inside her car. Did it look like anything was stolen from her purse?
Nothing appears to be taken.
The victim's driver's license revealed her identity. She was 36-year-old Angie Young.
Angie was a single mom in her 30s. She had a 14-year-old daughter who was just living her life.
The tragedy deepened when investigators learned there was nothing the paramedics could have done to save her life.
Angie died from gunshot wounds to the head. She was shot 11 times in total. The majority of those struck her head. It essentially ripped apart her brain and severed her spinal cord.
So what was your reaction to the violence involved in this attack?
It was incredibly brutal. It was incredibly shocking. And it made it so much more obvious that someone desperately wanted Angie dead.
Angie had been devoted to her career caring for the elderly and to raising her daughter.
I mean, it left her only daughter, who was in high school, without a parent. She was alone. Her family was completely devastated.
Investigators quickly located surveillance video of the single mother's final moments alive.
Inside of the White Castle, all we see is Angie go in, order some food, take her food, and walk back to her car.
Investigators wondered if Angie had been the victim of an attempted carjacking that had turned deadly.
Well, they certainly considered that carjacking theory. I think that's something that investigators always look at when they're, especially in this area of town.
You know, those are typical starting points when you have a victim in their car who has been shot.
Surveillance footage from the White Castle parking lot showed the horrific details of the homicide.
It's pretty grainy. It's at nighttime, so it's almost like you're viewing the video in like a night vision mode. But you see the shooter appear from kind of the bottom of the frame, and you see, you know, from behind him as he is moving toward Miss Young in her vehicle.
What we see is a man with long dreadlocks wearing a white tank top, jeans, and tennis shoes run from what looks like the alley behind the White Castle directly up to Angie's vehicle and open fire.
And you don't really see until he approaches or gets closer to the driver's side of the car that he's armed. But as soon as he gets to the driver's side door, he takes what I would describe as a shooting stance. He raises the pistol, and you can tell and see as he's firing shots. There's no audio. You can tell just from the muzzle flash. You can actually see shards of glass coming from the driver's side window as he's shooting rounds into the car. And then you see him quickly return from where he came towards the bottom frame of that video. And as he's fleeing from the scene where he just shot and killed Miss Young.
Could you tell if the gunman had said anything to Angie?
Not that we're aware of. It didn't appear from surveillance video that any words were exchanged, and so it appeared that the shooter literally walked up to her car and just opened fire. And then the man runs back towards the alley.
There's really no time for communication before he begins to shoot into her car. You can tell that he has something covering the bottom portion of his face.
The grisly details of the crime only amplified the mystery.
It didn't appear as if anything had been taken from the victim. In fact, it didn't appear as though the gunman even opened the driver's side door.
There appeared to be no conversation or demand. The shooter ran straight up to Angie's car and just started shooting, and he never tried to get into her car.
The shocking images baffled investigators.
It was a crime that just didn't make any sense. Law enforcement was pretty stumped at why such a brutal crime would have occurred.
But as the case unfolded, detectives never could have imagined the bizarre direction their investigation would take.
When Angie left, that truck followed down the street to the White Castle.
Did you believe the killer was inside that truck?
I think law enforcement knew that we had our shooter.
Detectives were alarmed by the overkill involved in the vicious attack on Angie Young.
So it's incredibly violent. There were more than 10 gunshots fired. It was clear that the shooting was an up-close shooting. Miss Young's car was one, if not the only car, particularly parked where she was in the lot. I think adding up all of those pieces of evidence painted a picture for investigators that this was a targeted shooting.
Police focused on answering the questions swirling around her murder.
They're trying to figure out why a single working mom was executed at a White Castle. They couldn't figure out what the motive was. There didn't seem to be anything that made sense.
It was Angie's family that came forward with a disturbing lead.
She had recently broken up with a boyfriend about a year before. His name was Leon Moss, and Leon had assaulted Angie and was actually pending trial for that.
We learned that the victim was previously a victim of a domestic assault incident. In fact, she was conveyed there from the scene by ambulance to a local hospital. Investigators learned from the local hospital of her most recent emergency contact, which happened to be a man she was dating at the time.
Did Leon Moss look anything like the gunman?
He did not look like the gunman at all. And so that's where law enforcement became very stumped, because the gunman had long dreadlocks, was muscular, was shorter, and that was not Mr. Moss's description at all.
Cell phone records showed Leon Moss, Angie's former boyfriend, had been miles away from the crime scene at the time of the shooting.
Based on Mr. Moss's cell phone records, which was all we had at the time, Mr. Moss appeared to have been at his home in St. Louis County. And so we could fairly definitively say that Mr. Moss was not the gunman in that situation.
With Leon Moss on the back burner, police ramped up their efforts and quickly located a witness.
So there was a gentleman who was sitting on his porch 2 streets behind the White Castle. And while he was sitting there, he saw a white 4-door truck pull up onto the block and saw someone get out of the passenger side. He didn't think much of it at that point in time. The man stood to the side for a moment, and frankly, the gentleman thought the man was urinating, and then walked away from the truck. Shortly thereafter, the gentleman heard gunshots and then saw that same man running back toward the truck, get in the passenger side, and the truck fled.
It was clear the gunman wasn't working alone.
They knew that at least 2 people were involved in that at that point in time, that someone was acting as a getaway driver. So they knew that information, certainly, and they also were then trying to figure out what the motive was at that point in time.
The witness provided critical information about the truck.
The witness was not able to provide a very detailed description of the person that he saw getting out of the car, but provided a very detailed description of the vehicle itself. And so at that point in time, investigators had a description of a white 4-door truck that they were able to really crack the case with.
And it was interesting because his account was so detailed. I think he was a car guy. So it wasn't just the make, model, color, white Chevy Silverado, but it was detailed. Like, he told us about the grille, detail about that. I think he gave us information about the wheels, about the exterior lights on the car.
A bolo, or be on the lookout, was immediately issued for the truck while detectives created a timeline of Angie's last known steps.
So they talked with a number of Angie's friends and actually the person that she talked to on the phone right before she went into the White Castle. And they learned that Angie had been at a friend's property, not particularly far from the White Castle, where friends would gather, they would play cards, they would play games.
Security footage from outside her friend's apartment revealed a crucial clue.
They could see Angie's vehicle parked, and then they could see, parked across the street for almost an hour, a white four-door truck that matched the description of that witness. And then when Angie left, that truck followed down the street to the White Castle. She had left Pops and was planning on grabbing some food and then heading about the rest of her evening.
A clearer picture of the murder was slowly coming into focus.
Those details, further suggested that this was a targeted shooting, a targeted murder, and that this was something that had been planned out.
Detectives questioned everyone in Angie's life.
They followed every possible lead. Anybody who might have a grudge against Angie, anybody who might have a reason to kill Angie.
It was all hands on deck to bring answers to Angie's loved ones. So what was the officer's reaction when he saw the vehicle?
When he found that truck, it was a huge break in the case.
Detectives investigating Angie Young's homicide were convinced if they could find the white truck that had been identified at the scene, it might lead them to her killer.
Everyone was incredibly committed to making sure that Angie and her family received the justice that they deserved.
Angie's ex-boyfriend, Leon Moss, had an alibi for the time of the shooting, but detectives wanted to take a closer look at the charges she had filed against him.
Leon Moss had pending charges for assaulting Angie Young, and particularly about a year and a half before, Angie Young had been taking her 14-year-old daughter to school, and Leon Moss appeared out of the blue in his own vehicle and began ramming Angie's car multiple times. He caused about $6,000 of damage to her car. Fortunately, she was not personally injured, but he had been charged with that assault and with the property damage of her vehicle.
When was Angie supposed to testify against him?
That case was actually set for trial on August 29th, 6 days after Angie was murdered.
Investigators went to his property to question him, and what they found provided the key to cracking the case.
They just so happened to see a white four-door truck that matched the description that they had seen on the surveillance video parked in front of that residence. And so again, immediately that raised their suspicions, that raised their concerns. It was huge for law enforcement.
Because they had such a great description on the truck, we're able to see, corroborate the details that witness had provided about distinctive features of the truck. They were pretty confident that when they found that white Chevy Silverado, it was the vehicle that was used by the individuals who were directly involved with killing this young.
When the truck was sent in for processing, the results from the lab were promising.
What they found actually was some latent fingerprints that were on the passenger side of the vehicle and a palm print on the driver's side of the vehicle.
The prints were put into the automated fingerprint identification system, and the database found a match.
The crime lab was able to determine that those prints matched an individual named Christopher Spades. Investigators knew that the shooter was in the passenger seat of that truck.
And there was more.
Christopher Spades matched the physical description of the shooter.
What went through your mind when you saw his photo?
Law enforcement knew that we had our shooter.
Christopher Spades had a lengthy criminal history.
Law enforcement was familiar with Christopher Spades. He had a number of arrests. He was associated with heroin distribution and other violent crime from that area.
But one question still remained.
What they didn't know was how Christopher Spades was in any way connected to either Angie Young or to their prime suspect, Leon Moss.
Detectives cast a wide net to find that connection.
What law enforcement did at that point in time was really a stroke of genius. They put out in their computer system an alert so that anyone who was an associate of Christopher Spades, if they were arrested, they interviewed them.
And the interviews paid off. Law enforcement discovered that Christopher Spades and an associate named Donald White had been paid to commit the crime. And the man who had orchestrated it all was Angie's ex-boyfriend, Leon Moss. His plan was to keep her from testifying against him in the upcoming trial.
He had this pending case for domestic assault where Miss Young was the victim.
What we learned was that he was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that Angie Young would not come to court.
Investigators found evidence that Moss had paid Donald White and Christopher Spades $10,000 to carry out his plan.
So the truck sat outside Pop's, waited for Angie to leave, followed her there, and then Christopher Spades ran out of the vehicle and executed Angie. Christopher Spades received $7,500 and Donald White took the other $2,500.
It was a shocking and callous motive.
He executed this woman simply to avoid taking responsibility for his own actions.
This poor woman was targeted and killed so she wouldn't move forward and, telling a jury that she had been previously abused. She was brave and resilient and was prepared to face her abuser in court.
Leon Moss, Christopher Spades, and Donald White were tried and convicted for committing Angie Young's senseless murder and were sentenced to life in prison. And now it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. Serving as a witness in a criminal case may carry with it some safety risks, but there are resources available to help maximize your safety. For example, if you're threatened or experience violence, contact the police and a witness advocate or prosecutor in the case. Seek support from local witness support services who can provide therapy and other resources to victims and witnesses of crimes. You can also contact the National Center for Victims of Crime at the Victim Connect Resource Center at victimconnect.org. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.